This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The UK begins the historic mass COVID-19 vaccinations. Experts are worried about Africa's fate in the scramble for COVID-19 vaccines. And donors take stock of Somalia's readiness for elections. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Uche Okoronkwo with a preview of your business news.
Thanks, Lindy. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Bit. Uganda starts negotiations to finance its standard gauge railway. And Zimbabwe bans importation of second-hand vehicles that are older than 10 years. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, we start the hour in the UK, where mass inoculation against COVID-19 started today, with the first regulated vaccine from Pfizer-BioNTech being rolled out. With the highest mortality rate in Europe, the UK government is hoping millions of vulnerable people will be vaccinated in the coming months. The World Health Organization says that public health measures are still important to prevent a third wave of the coronavirus. Yola Ap David reports on Britain's vaccination day.
She said she wasn't nervous and has just become Britain's most famous grandmother.
I'm happy it's happened, and now I've done it, and hopefully it'll help other people to come along and do as I did.
The 90-year-old received the very first Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine outside of a trial in the city of Coventry. The rollout will gather pace across Scotland, Wales and Keenan's native Northern Ireland from today.
Is a big moment in that in scientific endeavour, and this can start to heal this disease right across the world and protect people everywhere.
It's a logistical challenge for Britain's health service. The NHS is embarking on its largest and most ambitious inoculation programme ever. And despite millions more vaccines expected to arrive in the UK before the end of the month, the government warns it's far too early to relax social distancing rules.
We haven't defeated this virus yet, and it's important for people to understand that the virus is, alas, still rising in some parts of the country. It's rising, for instance, in London. We can't afford to relax now.
The Prime Minister is well aware that Britain is the worst hit European country with over 61,000 COVID-19 deaths. His government's handling of the pandemic has often been criticised by opposition politicians, and not everyone is keen to try the vaccine.
I think it's been rushed through. I don't think we know enough about it, and I don't see the reason for it. If the majority of people are surviving it, I don't see really why we need to have it.
Top scientists have worked round the clock all over the world, and we have to trust them.
People will take it as a false sense of security. So it's really important that people still follow the government guidelines. Otherwise, I think it's a really good step.
The headlines on the UK's first day of mass vaccinating are positive on what could be a momentous change in the fight against COVID-19. There are high hopes about this vaccine and other vaccines which are also being assessed, and that life next year will be radically better than this year. Yola Ap David, CGTN, London.
So while Britain rolls out its vaccines, Africa is still asking questions about access and availability. For more on this, we're now joined by Dr. Fiona Atuhebwe, the Africa Region New Vaccines Introduction Officer with the WHO. She joins us live now from Skype, via Skype rather, from Brazzaville. Doctor, of course, the UK has started its vaccination program, and the big question is, when can African nations hope to start getting and rather sending out COVID-19 vaccines across the continent?
Thank you very much. So we are dealing with two issues here. We have the vaccine availability. When will the vaccine come? But before the vaccine even comes, we need to be ready. So we have two parameters that we have to consider. The earliest possible date for the supply to step on our continent would be January 2021. But shall we be ready for it? That's a different issue, because as you saw in the recent past, we are monitoring the readiness in the region, and overall the readiness in the African region is at 35%, way below the requirement, which is about 80% for the vaccines to be given out, for countries to say they are ready to give out these vaccines. So the earliest date we are looking at is Q1 of 2021. Chances we could get the first minimal doses in the Q1, but the highest chance is that most of the doses, about 75% of the doses that we require, will come in mid-2021.
So still quite a wait then for African countries, but there are other concerns following the arrival of the vaccines. In the UK, we've seen that the government is floating the bill. That's, of course, through their National Health Service, or the NHS. What do we expect to see happen with African governments? Is there any plan to subsidize vaccines for poorer nations on the continent?
Yes. So that is one of the best things that has happened to us. And this is the COVAX facility that is called by WHO, Gavi, and CEPI, where we have had the pooled demand and pooled supply. And for all African countries, the 54 of them have joined the COVAX facility. And what does this mean for us? That for the first 20% of the population, the vaccines that will come for the first 20% of the population of each country will be fully paid for by the COVAX facility. So for the first high priority groups in each country, with the first number of doses, limited doses we shall have, these will be fully covered. Unless a country wants to vaccinate much more than that, that is when the country will start paying. Even then, they will use negotiated rates, negotiations that have been done by the COVAX facility. So yes, the poor countries, as the poor countries, will receive vaccine for 20% of our population, free of charge.
And Doctor, the US president is issuing an executive order that would make American vaccine makers prioritize supplying America first. How do you see this impacting, supply and demand and vaccine deliveries to other parts of the world, such as Africa?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. But we have had these negotiations with the manufacturers. So we have had the deals that have already been agreed upon by some of them, with some of the manufacturers, negotiations that are going on with other manufacturers, and forecasts that we have from what other manufacturers have told us that they can be able to give us. So we still hope that we can be able to meet at least 1.8 to 2 billion. Really, because the COVAX facility was looking at 2 billion doses for all the members of the COVAX facility by the end of 2021. So with what the agreements and forecasts that we've made, the deals that we've made with the manufacturers, we hope that we shall not be affected, but that cannot be totally ruled out.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Fiona Atahebwe. That was very informative indeed. Of course, she is the Africa Region New Vaccines Introduction Officer at the WHO. Now, many of Africa's 1.2 billion people will be needing access to COVID-19 vaccines. But as we've heard, it's unlikely to become a reality until at least mid next year. CGTN's Angelo Coppola tells us more.
Part of the process involves clinical trials of candidate vaccines, and only 2 sub-Saharan countries are conducting those trials at the moment, South Africa and Kenya.
And beyond those 2 countries, there are quite advanced discussion and negotiation with Uganda for a vaccine that is developed by the Imperial College in the UK to start a phase 3 also clinical trial in Uganda. But this is still at a very preliminary level. Probably we may see something happening next year.
Even when those trials are over, the continent still faces a challenge as it has limited manufacturing capacity to produce the COVID-19 vaccine. Currently, only South Africa, Egypt and Senegal have the expertise to produce the vaccine.
Other countries are interested, such as Ethiopia and Kenya. So I think in the next, say, 3 to 5 years, we will see this capacity increasing. But we have to accept that it isn't just a matter of building a factory. To actually build up the expertise to be able to manufacture and produce quality vaccines does take years.
There's a concern that it's only the richer developed countries that will get the first round of vaccines once they are approved by regulators.
about half of the potential vaccine manufacturing capacity is earmarked for richer countries in the world. But given that they are now likely, if things continue to go as well as we've seen with the early results from a number of vaccines, if there is an oversupply, I think there is a serious commitment from those richer countries to find ways to share an excess of vaccines with poorer countries.
The African Union acted decisively and early on in the pandemic to create an online platform to pool resources and centralize price negotiations on supplies and equipment. It now wants to purchase 750 million doses of a successful vaccine.
I know that there are ongoing discussions with respect to bilateral engagements, hoping to do bilateral agreements with the various vaccine manufacturers. Assumedly, and we don't fully understand this yet, I think it's evolving, the necessary quality assurance, quality testing, and also the necessary cold chain management and supply chain aspects would be factored into the type of vaccine or vaccines that get procured on the platform.
As everyone waits with bated breath for those approvals to go through for those candidate vaccines, it now becomes a nuts and bolts and logistical issue. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now in Algeria, authorities are preparing for a second wave of the novel coronavirus. They have converted establishments into quarantine zones amid growing fears of a second wave.
In the city of Bourain in Algeria, a university campus has been converted into a quarantine zone. Authorities there say that the move is part of measures aimed at stopping the sharp rise of COVID-19 cases in that state. They say the current situation is stable. But doctors at hospitals across Algeria say they have to be alert as they cannot ignore the risk of a new COVID-19 wave of infections.
We have noticed a decrease in the number of patients who come in for consultations. We must note that many of the patients come in suffering from severe respiratory issues and can't breathe as well. We have to hospitalize them because they don't come in early enough when they first see symptoms.
Just on Monday, the country recorded 573 new cases and 11 deaths. This brings the total number of cases to 88,825, including 2,527 deaths.
I have COVID-19 symptoms and I live in a small house with my parents, so I decided to come and stay here in order to not infect them. And I thank the doctors who are taking good care of us.
This is to avoid the risk of them infecting other people. We noticed that many people with the virus kept going out and infecting their families and other people. So we decided to keep them here to limit the risk of transmission.
Authorities have also begun random checks to be carried out for those who choose to quarantine at home. Chaumhono, CGTN.
A major conference has just been concluded in Somalia with the key donors gauging the progress the country has made ahead of general elections. The annual gathering was attended by foreign diplomats and heads of mission in the country. From Mogadishu, here's CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo with more details.
Excellencies. The one-day gathering brought together representatives from the federal government, regional administrations, and Somalia's international partners to take stock of progress made in the past year. Upcoming elections, the fight against militant group Al-Shabaab, security and economic development were among the issues discussed. Due to security challenges, the annual gathering took place at the heavily fortified Mogadishu International Airport compound. The upcoming general election set to be held next year dominated talks, with some regional leaders accusing the federal government of failing to honor the election deal signed in the capital last September. Somali Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble, who chaired the event, has vowed to move Somalia towards a more inclusive and democratic electoral system, a move that's expected to end a decades-long clan-based political system.
The federal government of Somalia has already embarked on a process to draft a roadmap for universal suffrage to take place in 2024-2025. The process will require engagement with a range of key stakeholders, including our federal member states, civil society, political parties, to ensure inclusive and credible election in the future.
Meanwhile, members of the opposition, including presidential aspirants seeking to vie for the country's top job next year, have formed a parallel election committee. This has widened an already existing rift ahead of crucial parliamentary and presidential vote. The United Nations is now calling for talks to end the political impasse.
We believe it's very important that the progress achieved on the non-contentious issues be secured prior to the end of this parliament, so that it is not necessary to start over again. This too will require a dialogue between the federal leadership and the federal member states.
On the security front, the government said its reforms programs are on track, with the National Army due to take over security responsibilities from the multinational African Union peacekeeping force, AMISOM.
Counter Al-Shabaab, transfer of security responsibilities from AMISOM and build the core security function of Somalia. Our approach continues to be the sustainable recovery of strategic locations from Al-Shabaab in a sequenced approach enabling local development and state building.
Al-Shabaab has stepped up attacks across the country in the run-up to the vote. In November, it overran an army base, killing 15 soldiers and civilians. It also killed scores in 2 suicide blasts near the police academy and the country's international airport. The group has also threatened to disrupt the upcoming polls. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Gender-based violence is on the rise in Ethiopia, but a lack of clear and consistent data appears to be one of the reasons cases are not being properly investigated. Faith-based organizations in Addis Ababa are now reviewing their role in protecting women and children against abuse as part of a global campaign marking 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoy reports from Addis Ababa.
According to the UN Children's Education Fund, Ethiopia is home to 15 million child brides, of whom 6 million are below the age of 15. And 65% of girls and women between the ages of 15 and 49 have undergone female genital mutilation. The Ethiopian government pledged to end FGM by 2025. Now, faith-based organizations in the country are stepping up to offer assistance.
In some places, in very remote areas, you can find religious institutions, churches and mosques that you may not find a very good and strong structure of government and other institutions. And as a result of that, religious institutions do have a very excellent instrument, especially in combating and addressing such kind of issues. And the other thing is what the religious institutions do have also trust by the community.
But they admit that overcoming cultural practices that are sometimes harmful will not be easy.
People sometimes don't want their culture to be touched, they don't want it to be changed. In some cases, for example, in issues which have to do with female genital mutilation, in some cultures it is considered as initiation rite. So for those kinds of cultures, we should think of other alternatives, other wholesome practices which mark women's transition into adulthood.
The UN says in many parts of the continent, these harmful practices continue to thrive because enacted laws are not enough.
Cultural traditions and religions and religious beliefs are often stronger than laws. While laws are critical for protecting women and girls' rights, they do not always bring about the desired behavioral change in individuals, in families, or even in communities.
Raising awareness has also proven to be a challenge. A number of religious institutions say they have already integrated gender-based violence in their studies. The UN, its partners, and the Ethiopian government have launched what they call the Red Card campaign. They are distributing these red cards, synonymous with the red cards in football. And this is to encourage people to make a daily pledge to kick out any forms of discrimination against women and girls. Coletta Wanjoy, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
One of the most celebrated films this year at the Cairo International Film Festival is Gaza Mon Amour. It has been hailed as one of the most important Arab films of 2020 as it recently won the NetPAC Award at the 45th Toronto International Film Festival. The film breaks the usual context of focusing on the struggle of Palestinians in Gaza and focuses on a love story that emerges between a fisherman and a widow. Adel Al-Makhraoui brings us that story.
For a city usually linked with brutal images about the struggle of Palestinians living there, the film Gaza Mon Amour introduces a heartwarming, funny story about the besieged Strip and its people. With its striking simplicity, the new Palestinian film takes its audience through a journey of unimaginable feelings. Cairo hosted its first Arab premiere as part of this week's Cairo International Film Festival events.
They were happy to be here because we could share the movie to the Egyptian audiences. And Egyptian love stories, and it's a love story, and there are lots of references to Egyptian cinema as well. So, I'm sure it will find its audience here. It's because it's Palestinian dialect from Gaza. Maybe we should think about subtitling it in Masri so that so that people get the note and all the jokes and stuff.
I like that it's simple. Instead of rushing to fill the movie with gadgets and tech, this is a very simple movie. It took me back to the times long ago when simple films used to give us the most enjoyment. This film sinks you into its feelings. It's not a typically planned movie with climax and anti-climax. No, it's a journey that gives you feelings.
Gaza Mon Amour is about a 60-year-old Palestinian fisherman who falls in love with his widow neighbor. Their love story gets challenged when he finds an ancient statue in the sea. The Hamas authorities then take it from him, and the struggle for justice and love begins. It is inspired from true events that took place in 2014.
It's coming out of the political side of Palestine. I don't believe it's a very political movie. It has a little bit of a hint regarding the monuments and all of that, but the beauty of it is coming with all of this trouble happening there. A love story is about to born.
Falling in love with Siham becomes Aisa's salvation from the siege, destruction and poverty that surrounds Gaza. Reflecting such a humane aspect of the Palestinian life brought the film wide critical acclaim. It received a 5-minute ovation at its world premiere in Venice. The film has also won the NetPAC Award at the Toronto Film Festival this year.
It's a universal story, it's not about being in Cairo, being in Paris, being in New York, anywhere. Love is universal. It's the story of their mother, it's the story of their father, it's the story of my mother. It could be anyone's story, and this is the genius of Arab and Tarzan, is that they found very local elements and they magnify them in universal stories, and this was the intention.
Surprisingly, and due to logistical challenges, the movie was not filmed in Gaza at all. The Gazan brothers, the Nasser brothers, who wrote and directed the movie, got paramount support from Palestine, though. Gaza Mon Amour is now Palestine's pick to enter the race for the Oscars nominations for the foreign film category. Adel Al-Makhraoui, CGTN, Cairo.
And let's now go to Uche for your latest business news.
Thanks, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Zimbabwe bans the importation of second-hand vehicles that are older than 10 years.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Well, let's start off in Zimbabwe. A ban on the importation of second-hand vehicles that are older than 10 years has drawn mixed reactions from stakeholders in the industry. Now, presenting his 2021 national budget last month, Finance Minister Professor Mthuli Ncube said that the move was meant to reduce foreign currency expenditure on light and commercial vehicles in the country, which run up to $1.5 billion between 2015 and 2020. Here's CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya filing this report from Harare.
Most of the cars in Lindy Mwamuka's lot are older than 10 years. When this inventory is gone, he won't be able to bring in the fast sellers, which are his bread and butter.
Most of these imports are usually from 2000 to about 2008, right? That's most of the cars that you get in Zimbabwe right now that people can afford.
He's not the only one worried about the impending ban.
A number of warehouses had been set up at Zimbabwe's border with South Africa to shorten the distance that customers from here need to travel to collect their vehicles. They too stand to see a sharp decline in business.
Some of them are trying to offload stock before the December 31st deadline, making things worse for local dealers.
Prices were so low that people thought there's a big sale going on in South Africa, so now we hardly get buyers, especially after the announcement by the minister. We haven't been getting buyers.
The exponential increase in second-hand car sales is indicative of demand for affordable vehicles, which has been unmet since the collapse of local assembly plants. The ban is welcome relief for the ailing domestic industry, which had been lobbying for regulated imports.
Our reaction as an association is that we are in the right direction. We do have an MIDP, which is the Motor Industry Development Policy, which we coined in 2018. In the MIDP, we had not envisaged a total ban, but we had chose to control, first of all, by duty and import tax, making them a bit expensive so that we phase them slowly. Whilst that is happening, we were now going to look for MOUs for our industry where people can now assemble the affordable vehicles.
Implementation of its strategy has been stifled by foreign currency shortages. The industry is hopeful that with the savings realized from reduced imports, more funds can be allocated to get it back on track. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Now, for a long time, Egypt has been a favorite destination for end-year celebrations. Tourists usually flock to the Red Sea and different cities to escape the cold winter and enjoy the warm weather. But as CGTN's Yasser Hakim now reports, this year could be a bit different given the challenges brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Christmas and New Year season should be a busy time for everyone in the tourism industry. But the COVID-19 fallout has hit the tourism industry hard. Hotel occupancy rates in Egypt have dropped by 85% since April. And Mohammed Qaoud, who owns a travel agency, he says the festive season won't be much better.
Christmas and New Year, it's one of the biggest festivals and holiday seasons for the Egyptian market. Nevertheless, due to the COVID-19 crisis, we have seen a dramatically fall in the demand compared to last year. We have worked together as an industry on how we can cope with the current challenges, and from there we start focusing more on the staycations and promoting the different gem destinations of Egypt for the local Egyptians to enjoy the beauty of their country.
Egypt has a population of 100 million people, and experts say only strong purchasing power could push occupancy rates up to 50% during the holidays from the current 20 to 25%. This could partially sustain the hospitality industry till the return of foreign visitors to pre-COVID levels. 2019 has been a record-breaking year for tourism in Egypt, attracting over 13 million tourists and income that exceeded $13.2 billion. Despite the gloomy outcome for 2020, Qaoud is optimistic that things will improve going forward.
With the good news of that they managed to secure between 94% to 95% from an effectiveness of a vaccine, we definitely see an increase in the demand starting from Easter 2021. So by 2021, we will slightly see an increase in the demand, and hopefully we will get to the same figures of 2019 by 2023. We are as well opening new destinations as well and increasing the airlines routes to another countries so we can penetrate new markets for Egypt.
So for now, it's all about getting prepared for an expected revival in this vital sector of Egypt's economy in 2021. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's turn our attention now to a new kind of business. Scorpions are very hardy animals that are resistant to hunger and thirst. They're also known to populate desert regions and are avoided due to the highly potent venom. Now, there are almost 2,000 scorpion species, but only 30 or 40 have poison that's strong enough to kill a person. However, an Egyptian man is now breeding nearly 80,000 scorpions and sells their venom abroad for thousands of dollars per gram.
Several years ago, a young Egyptian man abandoned his degree in archaeology to hunt scorpions in the country's shores and deserts, extracting their venom for medical use.
My project focuses on extracting venom from scorpions and snakes, which we catch from the Egyptian deserts and shores. We catch the scorpions and collect them from farms all over Egypt. We house more than 80,000 scorpions in many farms in Egypt, away from populated areas. We extract this venom because it has many benefits, especially in manufacturing the antivenom to treat scorpion bites. This is the first product. This is considered as one of the important species. It is the most important one in the Middle East, nicknamed the death stalker. I take the scorpion from its cage, I hold it this way to control its telson and its movement so that I can control the extraction of the venom. I apply salted water with 10% concentration on the nerve centers on the scorpion's vesicles.
Caught using a colored UV light, the scorpions are exposed to a tiny electric current to stimulate the release of the venom, 1 gram of which can produce between 20,000 to 50,000 doses of antivenom.
We expose the scorpion to an electric current reaching 12 volts, 5 amperes, just to stimulate the scorpion to extract the venom. We put the electric current on one of the scorpion's vesicles or between each and every vesicle on the nerve centers. This way, the venom is released in front of us. We only get a very small amount to keep the purity of the venom. We have 1 drop of the venom.
And the poison fetches high-grade value.
More than 24 medicines are being manufactured using scorpion and snake venom all over the world. We export the venom to different European and American countries, including Virginia, Texas, and California. We also export to Belgium, Denmark, Germany, and France. The price of 1 gram reaches more than $10,000 on average, and the price depends from one type of venom to the other.
Nothing good can be said of poison. But then again, it is said poison is in everything, and the dosage is what makes it either poison or a remedy. But for Mohammed, he has found a way to make his harvest of the scorpion's poisons a benefit and possible remedy in the future. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but ahead on Global Business Africa, we'll be exploring challenges that African nations are facing in getting the COVID-19 vaccination. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour. For now, it is back to Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Coming up, farmers in Madagascar find innovative ways to ensure their vanilla remains among the world's best.
The greatest journeys, The greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Madagascar produces nearly 80% of the world's commercial vanilla. The price for first-grade extraction of vanilla beans from the island hit $600 per kilogram in 2018 due to a number of factors, including bean theft and extreme weather. We traveled to Madagascar's Sava region and met farmers looking at innovative ways to grow the vanilla orchid as well as improve its quality as demand for the natural flavor increases.
This island nation produces nearly 80% of the world's vanilla. Regarded as the world's most popular aroma and flavor, used in foods, beverages and cosmetics. Though, in recent years, vanilla prices have skyrocketed to more than $500 a kilogram, which makes it more valuable than silver. In short, everyone's go-to flavor for ice cream is about to get more expensive. We traveled to Madagascar's Sava region to find out how the sought-after spice is cultivated.
Wow. Tiako be le mamboly satria sady mikarakary azy satria tsisy vary zany za kena mamboly fa raha ohatra tsy voakarakara tsisy vary pour rien zany za iny zany no atiavako azy ny atiavako le hoe le tany mihitsy zany naturel voajanahary izy ty de mamokatra izy tegna mamokatra zay zany mahatonga za hoe izy mamboly am'le raha misy satria voajanahary izy de za zany tsisy karazagna nianatra télé-école tamin'izy ty fô karazagna izy fa misy ray aman-dreny tena namboly igny atao karaha ty de mamboly fa zegny za nagnaranazy zany de hoe Philbert Primo de za zany 5 taogno managna renin-karatra ny asanazy zany mpamboly lavany amin'ny fokony eo amin'ny fokotany misy za zany président nandravasim-pokon'olo.
My great-grandfather from my mother part, he leave China, so he get in the ship and go to Mauritius first, and then from Mauritius he get to Voemar in Sava, and he finds the place very fine, and he decide to stay in Madagascar, and first he was doing the fish business and set up in Voemar. And this is how my family start in Madagascar. 我的名字是陈宇树，我以前是个土木工程师，重新搞起来，想现在重新种香草。
Fomba karaha ty zegny resaka fikarakaragna ity lavany ity. Izy ty zegny 5 taogno zegny délai nazy de rehefa afaka 5 taogno izy dia maty zegny izy. De soloagna am'zay zegny izy. De rehefa soloagna izy de afaka taogno araiky izy magnano fleur ty, magnano fleur. Tsendriky fleur voalohany mbola bouton karaha ty zegny izy. De rehefa afaka ambolagna mahay mitombo boky bouton ty de magnome karaha ty zegny izy. De rehefa magnome karaha ty am'zaiky izy dia magnome karazagna fleur karaha ty zegny izy. Izy magname fleur igny izy dia fomba osy voana am'zay sokafigna izy dia misy raha hely zegny agnaty ao apakatra magnan'igny izy avy am'zay tiregny izy Izy avy zegny mandritra ny 12 heures izy malazo zegny izy dia tsiraraka zegny izy fa mipetraka fô zegny izy. Isandra amizay izy le vita igny dia mitombo jusqu'à izy ohatran'igny. Fa le problème de zao rehefa mirecolte zay avy dahalo sy le mpangalatra mandrava zay. Misy tsy mitondra fiadiagna maro isan-karazany, mamono, tsy vitany mamono fa le vola zay amian'izay zay vidiny io zavatra ivangianjare aminay lavany igny mbola tafenjare kay vononjare. Ny androm-basim-pokon'olo ny karaha ty. Ny fanjakana zegny no namorogna azy. Dia hoe magnano antsoavo ny fanjakana hoe ataontsika nataontsika hoe 30 ao agnatin'ny fokon-tana raiky ny androm-basim-pokon'olo voaretina edy samborina tsy popoigny aterina am'zare dia
I try to modernize the plantation first to control the fifth of the vanilla beans. When it is concentrated in a greenhouse, it is more easy to control the fifth. You can put camera, you can put dog inside. And secondly, for the profitability, usually 1 acre of fields in the traditional way, you can get hundreds of kilograms of vanilla. In a greenhouse, you can get even 700 kilograms per acre. So this is very, very high profitability. And secondly is you can control the climate in the greenhouse and make the flower pop up anytime you want, instead of waiting for the season of flowers. So this is the main reason people are changing into greenhouse. And now I'm not alone. Many big companies now are switching for the greenhouse. Yes, the new method of planting vanilla in Sava now consists to concentrate all the vanilla vines in one small place. It looks like this because the vanilla vine is growing up and up. If you don't stop it somewhere, for instance in the hanger there, he has to get down again and go up and get down and go up. At the end, you will have many vines concentrated in this trunk. This is one contradiction point of Sava. Nobody in the region consumes it. Even myself, I just use it for doing some patisserie, and seldomly I cook it, but it's very rare, especially now. Even me cannot afford the vanilla cooking. Vanilla is expensive. The usual reason is only there is not enough production in the world to meet the market. And now there is a tendency of natural products, and the main reason is the demand cannot be stopped, so it's very hard to keep the price low actually.
Za zao tegna niasa lavany 5 taogno ary nampiova fiaignana anahy. Zegny ndraha misy malôha magnologna izy ka fa nisy vidiny lavany nandritra ny 5 taogno taty tegna hitanao fa nivoatra be zegny za tamin'ny fiaignana. ohatra za afaka mahavita tragno ô misy fanifanaka an-tragno ô misy raha talon zegny tagny izy ty mbola tsisy vidiny be million amizao tsisy raha ilagna izy ty na ôlo tsy tromba mba mangalangalatra ty zegny mba elo fô izy ka fa nisy vidiny de nangalatra ny olo fa za zo manana tombontsoa be noho ny fananko lavany.
L'impact ou les effets du changement climatique est visible dans tous les secteurs et dans tous les écosystèmes. Sur la Terre, au niveau du côté terrestre, on voit beaucoup d'insuffisance de pluie. Et comme ça a aussi entraîné des effets sur le climat en général, il y a les cyclones qui deviennent de plus en plus violents, qui rôdent les côtes. Donc les côtes deviennent de plus en plus étroites. Il y a l'augmentation de la température. Il y a le décalage des saisons. La pluie n'arrive plus au même moment. Il y a augmentation de la durée de la sécheresse. Et l'impact, c'est visible au niveau de la terre, donc, où il y a un changement de la manière de cultiver. Quand la saison est décalée, les gens, les producteurs ne savent plus comment faire. Donc, quand il y a une augmentation de la température, ça joue donc sur les phénomènes, sur l'activité biologique de la vanille. Et le grand défi, c'est comment impliquer donc le gouvernement, le ministère de l'Agriculture, dans tout ça, comment impliquer la recherche pour trouver ensemble donc des solutions pour aider les communautés de producteurs de vanille.
Time now for your sports news. Here's what's coming up. Breakdancing is now an Olympic sport as it's been added to the 2024 Games in Paris, France.
How would you create your legend?